Hey everyone, Professor Long here. This message that I'm recording is intended for the students who are enrolled in my Part 1 or Biology 2401 A&P course. If you're in that course, you guys know that it is one of the major prerequisites, it is the prerequisite in my opinion, for all of your allied health science courses. So if you're going for OTA, PTA, nursing, respiratory therapy, surgical tech, EMT, paramedic, dental hygiene, dental assisting, radiology tech, echocardiography, diagnostic medical sonography, and I know there's a few other programs that require this as a prerequisite to apply for their programs. You have to have the grades to get into those programs. These are highly competitive programs. Everybody's going for these classes because in healthcare, you're going to be always in demand for a job no matter where you go. You can get a degree here, you can move to any city in the United States, and they're going to want people who are licensed to do these jobs. There's definitely a shortage of healthcare professionals, and they're very good paying jobs, at least for the time being. Who knows what the government will do to them. But nonetheless, everybody is vying for seats in these programs. And it's very competitive. Some programs more so than others, but all of these programs are incredibly competitive. What that means is you have to have all the coursework and you have to have the good grades in these courses in order to be competitive to get into the programs. And that is why your grades are so important in this class, okay? The reason I'm making this video is because we are now past the first round of exams. We've done lecture test 1 and lab test 1. Some of y'all have done beautifully. Some of your grades are great. I have my A's and my B's. Those are people that are kind of locked in, and that's what they're going to continue. They've already set the tone. Unfortunately, it's not a majority of the class, but that's normal for this class. If you're taking anatomy and physiology, you've probably heard somewhere along the line, oh man, that's a really hard class. Everyone thinks it's a difficult course, except for me. I don't think it's difficult. I think it requires a lot of work. It requires a lot of time, effort, energy, and dedication. Okay, it's very time consuming. And if you're not willing to put in that effort, or you don't have the time to put in the effort, then you're not going to fare very well. That's part of the reality. You've got to carve out time in your life for this class to study and prepare for your exams so that you can do well to make the grades. And then the grades will determine when you apply for your programs whether you get in or not. It's not just grades. There are some entrance exams for different programs, and they look at a number of other things. But ultimately, your grade in this class is really important. And some of y'all are already starting to panic. I know because of the emails. And I've been teaching this class for 21 years at Del Mar now. And every semester I get the emails. And it's a good thing, in my opinion, that people are starting to sort of freak out and panic about their grade because they're not doing as well as they liked. But it's normal, okay? Usually by the end of the first exam, out of 60 students, I probably have maybe 5 A's. By the end of the semester, I will have more than that, okay? And I usually have a small handful of B's. By the end of the semester, I'll have a lot more. My goal is to get all of y'all to understand how to be a good student when it comes to learning the sciences, particularly A&P. Not a lot of my students coming into this class have strong science backgrounds, and that's just the reality. Either you haven't been in school in a really long time. I've got students in their 40s and 50s. I'm 51, and I've got students that are my age or more coming back to school. Or, even if you're in your 30s and you haven't been in college, you haven't taken a class since you were in high school. I mean, you got 15, 20 years sometimes, 10 years. You forget how to learn. It's kind of like riding a bicycle. If I put some of y'all on a bicycle right now, you're going to look kind of shaky and all over the place until you get, back in the groove. Well, becoming a student is kind of like that. You got to get back in the groove of learning how to study, how to manage your time, how to set time aside for this. And unfortunately, in my opinion, in my experience, since I have kids that are in high school and I work with a lot of kids, I see a lot of kids that are just trying to get the credit. They just want to get the grade without putting in the time, effort, or energy. And you have to study. You have to master this material. This ain't high school anymore. But the reason I mention it is because I do believe that in a large sense, and this is not the fault of teachers, but it's the way that they're trying to structure and engineer education these days, is that there's so much emphasis on test scores, but not on the learning. And I know that the learning should show up in the test scores, but um, students aren't being taught how to learn, and they're trying to force so much information in such a short period of time. It's like checking all these boxes or getting all your stamps and turning in your stamp book and getting your certificate at the end of the process. Well, it doesn't work that way. You have to know and understand this material, because you're going to use these as building blocks for the next level and the next level. And what we're seeing is a lot of students are either A, been out of school way too long, or B, they went through high school not really trying to learn, but just trying to get the grade. And the emphasis is always on the outcome, the grade. But the process is where the magic happens, where the learning happens. And so I have a lot of students that come in and either A, they haven't been in school forever, so they're still learning how to learn, or B, they didn't learn how to learn. So they just figure I'm supposed to come in and sit here with my hands, folded like this and listen to you talk, forget about it for a couple of weeks, and then come take a quiz and make an A. And it doesn't work that way. There's so much material and detailed material that you have to understand in order to answer the questions on the exams. And the reason we designed the course the way that we do is because when you get to the next level, A&P2, we're going to expect you to remember the information from A&P1. It builds on these topics. When you get into your program, if you're lucky enough to get into a program, they're going to require you to understand this material. And everything they're going to throw at you is going to be predicated upon your understanding of this material. And if you are missing any level of the pyramid, every level above that comes crashing down. If your foundation is shot, the whole thing comes crashing down. And anatomy and physiology is the foundational course, the foundational principles for many of the things that you're going to be doing in the allied health sciences in your programs. Okay, so what we try to do is give you everything we can to set that foundation as solidly as we can, so when you get into A&P2 and we say, hey, so do you remember in part 1 when we talked about this? Well, here it is. Now we're going to expound upon it and add more detail. If you don't understand the foundational principle, the details have nowhere to go. You're going to get lost. When you get into the program, they're going to tell you literally something like, hey, go read the chapter on the urinary system and understand all these pathologies with the renal system and how they affect breathing, cardiovascular, how they affect your thinking and your brain and the release of chemicals in the brain, because all the systems are all connected. And you're going to have to see those connections and understand them. Now, I'm talking about all of this because as we've gotten through the first round of exams, some of y'all are freaking out and panicking and like, oh my God, I'm not going to pass this class. Don't quit yet. It's way too early in the process. You can't get any money back. So let's stick with this as long as we can. And here are my goals. My goal is to get as many of y'all across the finish line with the grades that you need to move on to the next level. But I can't just push y'all through if you don't understand the material. That would be like asking me me asking you to stand on this chair so the next instructor in part 2 can kick it out from under you and you come crashing down. That would be cruel and not nice, and setting you up for failure in the future. So I'm somewhat of a gatekeeper. All A&P faculty are. So we can't let you through until we believe you're ready. And not being ready right away doesn't mean no, it just means not yet. Okay? And so by the end of this semester, I'm going to have some of y'all that are not quite ready for A&P2. You're not going to make the grade you need to move forward. And look, all the allied health science programs require A's and B's for you to get in. You really have to have mostly A's and B's, almost entirely A's and B's, if not just A's for some of the programs. So if you're making C's and D's in A&P, 1, do not take A&P2 yet. Don't take A&P2 until you've made the grade that you need in A&P1. There's no shame in coming up short or trying and failing. There should be shame in not caring enough to try or give your best. Okay? So, my goal is not only to have as many of y'all cross the finish line, but for those of you that don't quite get there, by the end of the semester, you start gaining some traction and figuring out how to do this. And you see your grades go up. But if the original grades are so bad that you just don't quite get there, they average out to a C or less, that's okay. Imagine if you can start on day 1 what you now know at the end of A&P1. Would you be better prepared? Would you know how to prepare better? Would you know how to study better? Once you've seen the exams and how I test, could you better prepare for the exams knowing what to expect? So over time, I think some of y'all are going to see your grades go up because you're learning how to study, you're learning how to manage your time, you're learning how to take my exams. For some of y'all, the process is going to take a little longer based on your circumstances. Job, kids, availability, other issues, health scares, issues in life. This freeze that just happened, we just had a major freeze here in South Texas, and we had to delay classes for a whole week because people didn't have power. So there's going to be obstacles that get in the way. Whatever the thing is, it doesn't matter. You either get across that finish line, above the line, or you don't. If you're above the line, move on to part 2. If you're not, come back through part 1. But I can guarantee you that the second time you take it, you should do way better than you did the first time because you know what to expect. You're already better at being a student. So part of this journey that we're on, if you watch my videos, is me trying to teach you how to learn or think about the information. And also there's some videos that I've posted on my Canvas page that go over how to study properly, how to manage your time better, some test taking skills. And so if you haven't seen those, go back into Canvas, go into the intro module in my Canvas course, and look on the videos on how to be a better student, how to study better, how to manage your time, how to be a better test taker. If you watch those, there's a lot of tips and tricks that I can help you with. But I do want to show you something, and I want to draw this on the board. So just pay attention, okay? I'm sorry if there's a glare. I've tried to get rid of it as much as possible, but I know my dining room lights do this. So look, think of this as a bullseye. An A, a B would be the next ring on the bullseye, a C is the next ring on the bullseye, and the outer ring is a D. If you miss the bullseye, you've got an F, okay? Now, if you think of the very center of the bullseye as 100, then the edge of the 80 of the A would be a 90, the edge of the B would be an 80, a 70, and a 60, okay? So, if you've scored from about an 85 into 100, you're probably going to make an A. What you're doing is working. Your technique for studying is excellent. You just need to keep doing what you're doing. And over time, you're going to refine those little mistakes as you look at the exams and you realize the mistakes you've made. You'll be able to refine things and make minor changes to hit your target. And it's literally like shooting a bow and arrow. There's a technique to firing a rifle, to being a sniper, or shooting a bow and arrow properly. And if your technique is excellent, and you have to practice and practice and practice, then you're going to hit the bullseye most of the time. There's a technique to this stuff, okay? Now, if you scored from about, I don't know, I'd say like a 72, 75 on into about an 85, you're on your way to maybe making an A, but probably going to lock in a B. You've done well enough, not knowing how I test or what my test questions look like. You've done well enough in preparing. But you need to refine your technique. You need to make bigger adjustments to your technique, okay? And what those adjustments are, you probably know. And if you don't know, then send me an email and ask for some help, and we'll discuss it one-on-one, okay? Now, I can help you refine some of your technique, but sometimes I need to speak with you one-on-one to figure out what your particular issue is. For most students, it's not even academic. It's some issue outside the classroom. Now, if you scored from a 60 on into a lower to middle 70s, you're going to make bigger changes to your studying technique. You need to study more often, study harder, study smarter, do more practice quizzes, or, hey, study more and take less practice quizzes. If you didn't go to SI or tutoring, go to SI or tutoring, but try something different, or else you're going to continue to hit the same mark. If you don't refine and change your technique, you're going to get the same result. Now, if you scored out here, if you scored from a 30 to about a 50, you really, really need to change everything you're doing, okay? And if you scored below that, boy, you didn't even try. I'm sorry, or maybe you tried, but you just really were fumbling and way too many things got in your way. But you really have to make wholesale changes, okay? You have to study more often. You have to study harder. You have to rearrange your life so that you have study time. You got to make studying a priority. I don't know what your particular issues are, but you got to figure out, what did you do wrong? What could you do differently and better? And then start doing it. If you know the mistakes that you made And if you know the things you need to fix, then fix them. If you waited to the last minute to start watching videos, don't do it. You have to watch them every day and do a little bit of your notes every single day. If you, if you studied a lot in the beginning but then trailed off because you thought you knew it and you quit reviewing, then don't do that. Whatever you did that prevented you from being successful, you need to change it. If you know what to change and fix, change it and fix it. If you don't know what to change or fix, then that's when you message me and say, hey, Mr. Long, I really am lost. And we will know better after the second exam. So when y'all take lecture test 2 in the very near future, then you guys can reevaluate, shoot me an email. If you do not hear back from me or get the response that you need, then you continue to badger me. That's my job. You're not going to bother me. My job is to be bothered by students. And even when it's a headache for me, that's okay. It's what I signed up for. It's my obligation to you, and I will try to meet it. And if you don't hear back from me in a timely fashion, keep messaging me. Okay? In this digital world that we're in right now, sometimes information gets lost or messages get lost, and I apologize, but it happens. So, to repeat, if you know what you're doing is working, keep doing it. If you're at the bottom edge of this range or at the top edge of this range, then make some minor adjustments. Study a little more, tighten it up a little bit, do more practice quizzes, review more. Whatever it is that you're doing is working. You just need to make refined adjustments, or maybe take more time to read your questions and not hurry up through the test. If you're in this middle range, you need to make some bigger, you need to study more. You need to study smarter or better or harder or go to SI or do something. If you're way out here, then it's an even bigger deal, okay? Then you really need to make bigger changes. And if you're out here, you're doing everything wrong. You let go of the bow and not the arrow, or you're spinning around trying to hit a target with random movements, and it's not going to work, okay? If you really want to be a nurse, then you really, or OTA or PTA or whatever your major is, if you really want to do that, you're going to spend the next several years of your life, and it's only going to get harder and more time consuming. If you know anybody in the nursing program or OTA or PTA or any of the programs, the question isn't, hey, did you cry this week? It is, how many times this week did you cry? Did you break down? How frustrated are you? How difficult is it? How time consuming is it? It is incredibly time consuming. But those people that are going to make the starting team, they're going to walk on a floor, see patients, and get a fat paycheck for it, are the people who put in the most work. It's just like in sports. The people who practice the most, and not always in front of a coach. You can't just study when I'm in front of you. Now, in the digital world, you can watch videos anytime you want, but you got to dig in the book. You got to write notes out. You got to learn to teach this to a 7th grader. Imagine if you had to give a lecture on tissues to a 7th grader. Could you name the 4 classifications of tissues? And what are some of the major details of each? Which cells would be found in each? Or where do you find this tissue and why? Where do you find this tissue and why? Where is simple squamous epithelium in the body? What is simple squamous epithelium? What does the name mean? You should be able to grab a marker board and a pen and write it out, or pen and paper and write it out from memory without looking at your notes. If you can do that, and you've put in the time, the effort, and the energy to be able to walk up to a board, for me to hand you a marker and say, teach me about epithelial tissues, how many there are, where they're located, and the basics. You should be able to start reproducing your notes. Mr. Long, there's 4 major tissues: epithelium, connective, muscle, neural. All epithelial tissues share these common characteristics. Here are the types of epithelial tissues that we learned about: simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, stratified squamous, pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium, and transitional epithelium. So there's either 5 or 6, depending on what I've presented to you which semester, right? You should be able to spit that out and give me the location and function. If you can't do that like I just did it, then you're not ready for the exam. You really need to spend more time with the information. And so some of y'all can do that. Some of y'all really need to change what you're doing and how you're studying. It's repetition, repetition, repetition. Your brain cannot remember 25 things. It can't remember 12 things. It can remember between 4 and 7 things in the short term. If you can't get it in the short-term memory, you will not convert it to long-term memory for recall later on. So don't go over all the tissues. Just go over 3 or 4 things. Where do I find simple squamous epithelium? List the location and the function. And where do I find simple cuboidal? Location and function. And do those over and over and over. Have your notes nearby. Start to write it out. And you're going to go, wow, I forgot. And you're going to cheat and look at your notes and then finish writing it. Erase it. Write it again. And every time you do it over and over and over and over till you can't stand it, you're going to cheat less and less and less and look at your notes less and less and less until 3 times in a row you can write the location and function of those 2 tissues. Then you go to the next 2. Where do I find, stratified squamous? Where do I find simple columnar and pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium? Location, function. You should practice them, and write them. Then see if you can do all of them together. Can you write simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, pseudostratified ciliated columnar, and stratified squamous? Location, function. It should take you an hour or 2. Then you go on to connective tissues. Then you go on to cartilages. Then you go, you have to work a little at a time every day. Practice, repetition. As I always say, do it till you can't stand it. Then do it 3 more times. Then you will be successful. Okay? If you're not doing those things, then you're getting these results. If you are doing those things and you're still getting these results, then you need to consult me and see if we can't figure out what's bothering you and how to get you into this range. Okay? So, a few things I want you to walk away from this message knowing. 1, it's not time to quit yet. It's way too early in the game. If you watched the Super Bowl a couple of years ago when the Falcons played the New England Patriots, the Falcons were up by 24 points. I think it was 24-point lead going into the 4th quarter. Everyone thought the Super Bowl was over. The Patriots came back and won because they never quit. They made the right adjustments, and they just kept, picking away, one play at a time. So it's not too late yet. You've only had 1 lecture test and 1 lab test. You still have 5 lecture tests and 3 lab tests and a final exam to get your grade where you need to be. So if you're looking at your grade and freaking out, going, oh my God, should I drop? No, don't even think about that, okay? Just start working and make the adjustments. And over time, you're going to make the adjustments. And through the process, you're going to figure out how to be a better student. And hopefully you're in this range before the end of the semester. If not, then you come back on, if you started another semester on day 1, knowing what you knew at the end of part 1 AMP, then you would be able to do so much better from the get-go, and you will fly through it. Look, roughly 40%, I think it's 37% is the national statistic, roughly close to 37% of all students in an A&P 1 course are repeating the course. So, almost more than a third of the students that are in this class that are doing well might be doing well because they've already taken it and they're retaking it. They know what to expect. And some of y'all are like, oh, I've never done this before, and I feel lost and confused. It's so much and it's so new. And then there's a lot of psychology in the back of your brain. Am I not smart? Am I, not talented? Or I dropped out and I'm 30-something years old in school and I feel like the old person. There's a lot of psychology that goes on. You got to drop all that. All you can do is focus on what's in front of you and do the best that you can. Okay? And if anyone outside the arena of our classroom is mocking you or telling you you can't do it or you're not smart enough, you got to learn to tune them out. They don't have the guts to step in the arena. And the only people whose opinion matters are the people who've been in this arena and understand what it's like to take this class. It's scary being a student, especially if you're someone who feels particularly like you're not smart. And if you've had people in your life tell you that you're not smart, it's shameful, but I have students that come in and say, oh, I've been told I've been dumb my whole life. I'm not smart. It's a bunch of BS. You can't believe those people. So you're smart enough to know that you could sign up for this class and get here. Then you're smart enough to get through it. And you cannot listen to those people. They're trying to tear you down because they didn't feel good enough about themselves. And you cannot listen to the critics. It's not the critic who counts. It's a famous poem by Teddy Roosevelt, former president. It's not the critic who counts. Not the person who stands outside the arena and mocks you for coming up short. What counts is the person who's in the arena, whose effort, covered in dust and blood and sweat, who is going to work and fight to try to be the best they can be and be the victor. And you might come up short on occasion, but at least in the best case scenario, you know the high of success. And in a worst case scenario, you know the agony of defeat. And either way, you know that you pursued this valiantly with your best effort. And if you give your best effort, you can be happy with it, even if you come up short. And let me tell you this. I'm going to write this name on the board, and I want you guys to look this name up if you've never looked this lady up. Her name is Brene. It's like the name Renee, but with a B. Brown. She's a sociologist. She was on Oprah. I caught her on Oprah. My wife was watching one of the Oprah shows or one of the TED Talks, and she gave a talk about vulnerability, what it's like to be scared and vulnerable. And nobody wants to admit that. We all try to be too macho and, I don't know what fear is. But everybody in this world has some fear of something, has been vulnerable for something. And what she talks about is it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to not be perfect. It's not okay to not try. And you've got to go out and you've got to give your best effort. And if you do that, it's okay. And one of her books is, I used to think it was only me, but it's not. And we all walk around with that. We all think it's just us that has the crazy drunk uncle, or, the drug addict in the family, or the person who's been to prison, or our parents abandoned us, or we're the only ones that have this issue, that have this zit in our forehead. Well, look around the room. Everybody's got one. Everyone's had one, So whatever issues you're facing, everybody else has faced them. It's not just you. Everybody else is in the same boat. They're afraid to fail. They want success. And there's some fear and vulnerability there. It's scary being a student, because what if everything everyone's ever said about you is true? If you fail, does that prove them true? No, it does not. You've got to lose that fear of failure. You've got to lose listening to the critics, and you can just come in and do your best and be the best that you can be. Look up a couple of her lectures on YouTube and watch them. And some of them are life-changing, especially if you can find the one on vulnerability, one of her TED Talks. It's TED, TED, like the name. Lose your fear of failure. All you can do is the best that you can do. Let the chips fall where they may. And if you come up short, come back and try again and try again. And I'll tell you this. I know this video is getting a little long. Okay. Michael Jordan, greatest basketball player to ever play the game. And I know there's LeBron and Kobe fans out there, and they're right there underneath him, but they're still not close to Michael. If you're a real basketball fan and you ever got to see him play, you know what I mean. In my opinion, the greatest basketball player to ever play the game. When he tried out for his high school basketball team, he got cut. His coach told him, "You're not good enough to play basketball with these 12 other boys. You need to go play baseball or do something else." And he went home, cried to his mom, and his mom said, "Get a basketball in your hand and start working." She didn't go yell at the coach and talk to the principal and, do all of that stuff. She told him, "It's up to you to get better. You got a year till the next tryout. You got a year to get better." And he worked his tail off. He didn't get cut only once. He got cut twice. They told him, "You're not good enough yet." But he finally made the team. He became one of the leading scorers. Got a full ride scholarship to the University of North Carolina, Tar Heels. His junior year, I watched it in live on TV. He went and hits the winning shot to win the game, to win the national championship, and got drafted, the number 3 draft pick, by the Chicago Bulls, the losingest team in NBA history. And by the time he left there, he had won 6 national championships. So this is a kid who has at least 7 championships, 6 in the NBA, 1 in NCAA. But at the beginning of his career, he was failing. He wasn't making the team. And his coach even told him, "You're not good enough to do this." And he didn't listen. He went and worked harder. And he came back and he proved everyone wrong. And I heard the story, I don't know if it's true, that when he was getting inducted in the Hall of Fame, he invited that coach. Not to rub it in his face, but to say thank you. Because of you, I worked harder. I developed that level of skill because I wanted to prove everybody wrong. You forced me to work harder and be the better athlete. So, you guys might come up a little bit short. You might not do as well as you want, or you might be down here right now, but if you make the necessary changes and you work hard enough, you can move up into the grade range that you need to be in. Okay? We're only one test down for lecture, only one down for lab, and if you blew them both, so be it. Can't do anything about what's happened. All we can do is look forward and start studying and working, get motivated, find out what you need to do differently, and then do it. And if you don't know what you could do differently, that's when you contact me and we'll have a one-on-one conversation through Microsoft Teams or Zoom or something, and we'll fix the problems, okay? But don't quit on me yet. We got far too long to go in this class, okay? Remember, your education is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And it's not even a straight line marathon. It's going to take twists and turns, and you might tumble down the hill a few times. But if you don't give up, you will meet with success. And I know this because I've seen it time and time again in my class. As a matter of fact, one of the gentlemen who went through my class, I've talked about this before in a video. I ran into him a few weeks ago at the grocery store. He sent me an email all these years later because he's getting his doctorate as a registered nurse anesthetist, a CRNA. He didn't do well in A&P1 the first time and thought about changing his major. And I talked him out of it. I said, come back give it one more try. And he aced my class. He went through part 2 A&P, made the grades, got into the nursing program. He got an associate's in nursing, then matriculated into a bachelor's in nursing. After a couple of years of working, he decided he wanted to become a certified registered nurse anesthetist. They make big bucks. So he got into a master's program for that. Just this past year, he finished his PhD in certified registered nurse anesthesia. And this is a kid that early on struggled mightily. And I'm able to tell you that because when I saw him at HEB and we talked about it, I asked him if I could tell his story. And he said, yes, I could use that story. And I may even try to have him come in and do a little interview for my students so we can talk about it and you can see straight from the horse's mouth how difficult it was, and yet he never gave up. He worked hard, and he's meeting beyond success. You can do this too, okay? Anyway, keep your nose to the grindstone. Figure out what you need to fix and then do that. And don't blame anyone else. Don't make any excuses. Just do the work you need to do. And if you don't know what to do, ask me, and I'll do my best to try to help you, okay? Sorry this was a little long-winded, but I wanted to get this message out to you students so that you don't give up hope, that you don't lose faith, all right? Start working hard, and we'll see where the chips fall on test 2, and then we'll go forward from there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the flip side.